Good afternoon. I'm going to call our board meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. And I will turn it over to Trustee Gimber for our land acknowledgement.
Welcome to our division office located on the traditional land and territory of the Niitsitapi, Piikani, Kainai, and Siksika, the Blackfoot people, within the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta.
Thank you. And can I now have everyone stand for O Canada, please? Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. We have the December 14th, 2021 consent agenda be approved by the Board of Trustees as presented or amended. Can I have someone make that motion? Trustee Yagos? Okay, any discussion around that? Go ahead, Trustee Yagos.
I'd like to pull out professional learning, please.
Okay. We will make that new agenda item F5. Perfect. Thank you. Trustee Hodges?
Sorry, I just need to bring this forward. I need to just add an agenda item
Okay.
for, sorry, I just need to bring it up here. Having to do with writing a letter to advocacy on behalf of to go towards the Chamber of Commerce. It came out of our meeting earlier today, so business arising.
Okay, so we'll add that as F6. Direction to advocacy. Okay. Anyone else? Trustee Toon?
Madam Chair, do we want to approve the consent agenda and then do emergent changes in C, or so I have other additional items as well?
Seems like a good idea. Okay, is there any other changes or things that need to be pulled from the consent agenda? Sorry about that, trustees. No? Okay, all in favor? Perfect, that passed. Okay, so then we'll move on to item C, and thank you for that, Trustee Toon. Emergent changes to the agenda. We'll go with Trustee Hodges would like to add, we'll make that F6 to direct advocacy.
So the motion will be to direct advocacy to write and send a letter to our community chambers of commerce with LRSD around having trustees join the chamber.
Thank you. Any other emergent changes to the agenda at this time? Trustee Toon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd ask that item F4 be changed to an action item with the recommendation that the board approve the presented COVID implementation and recommendations by the board, and that it be placed on the agenda after our delegations.
Sorry, you wanted F4 moved to?
An action item with the recommendation to approve the implementation plan.
Okay. So then there would be a motion that we would go with that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion around that? Is everyone comfortable with that? So Trustee Toon is asking that we move F4, the COVID implementation plan and recommendation presentation, and move it to E4, and that it would then have a motion that says to accept it. Is everyone comfortable moving that to an action item? Trustee Stanglitz?
I just had concerns because we had particularly discussed the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any other trustees have concerns around that? Yeah, oh, no, not, okay. So we'll, yeah, go ahead, Trustee Toon.
I can speak to the rationale. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think part of the problem is we asked for something to come back to the board and to have it just presented without a definitive timeline of discussing it or having it for approval. I think creates a lot of anxiety for stakeholders. I've been getting a lot of feedback on asking when we were making the decision. My assumption was when it was going to be placed on this agenda, it would come with a recommendation to approve that as follows. So that would be the logical step. And then once we have a motion, we can debate it, we can table it, we can do whatever the board wishes. But that way we have a definitive answer to tell stakeholders how we will be proceeding and what it will look like.
Thank you, Trustee Toon. Trustee Long?
Yeah, I was just looking for a date in there. It's at our last board meeting when we talked about or discussed having Superintendent Seguin bring a recommendation to us, a policy that they had created. I put a motion on the table to set a date, and that motion was defeated. And now today, we are asking that we vote today on the policy that's just been presented today. That's something changed in the meantime. Don't know what, but it seems rather strange to me that a few weeks ago, we could not vote today because that was too soon. We had to hear the policy. And here we are today to hear the policy, and now we should vote today. I'm questioning what's happening here agenda-wise.
Thank you, Trustee Long. Trustee Hodges?
I don't think Trustee Toon is saying we have to vote today. And yes, the motion was defeated to put it on the table as a date. We just wanted to make sure administration had enough time to gather the input and bring forward the information to us. We cannot discuss this item unless it's an action item. And so to receive this just as information and not being able to discuss it publicly, I feel we need to discuss it publicly. So that's why I'm agreeing with Mr. Toon and wanting to move it into an action item.
Thank you. Trustee Yagos?
Yes, we have two delegations today to talk about this, and I'd like to get some information on it. Although we said we're not going to vote on this, we can discuss it. If it is, we make a motion, we can discuss motions. So it doesn't, that doesn't restrict us any discussion once a motion is made. And we can make a motion anytime at all throughout the agenda. So that was my understanding why we wanted it as a F4 rather than put it earlier, because so we could get as much information as we possibly can, so we could be, we could have everything in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Yagos. Okay, Trustee Toon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking to provide clarity and have a transparency for board members and for the public. I take offense to the inference that there is any agenda here. There's no agenda or any motivation to make a decision one way or the other. I come into this meeting with an open mind, as I always do, and would just like the public to be well aware if we are going to do it, it's not because one trustee decided halfway through an agenda that they all of a sudden want to vote and push the agenda forward. I would rather it be transparent from the start, that we all vote on it and are in agreement that we move forward together, united as a board. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Toon. Is there any other questions or comments before we vote on moving this to an action item? No? Okay, thank you. So we will now be voting on, Trustee Toon has put forward that we move F4, which reads, Mr. Darrell Seguin, Superintendent, will present a COVID-19 implementation plan and recommendation to the Board of Trustees. That would be moved to E4 as an action item, but then move table to the end of the meeting. So all those who are in favor of moving F4 to E4, please raise your hands. All in favor?
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yep.
You said, and I didn't hear that when Trustee Toon said it. So what you're saying, we're moving it to E4, but not discussing it to the end of the agenda? I'm sorry, I did not hear that part of it. Okay.
Yes, that is correct. Okay, so I will call the question again. All those in favor of moving item F4 to E4 to become an action item, please raise your hand. Okay, that's passed. Perfect. Thank you. Is there any other emergent changes to the agenda? No. Okay. So the recommendation that the December 14th, 2021 regular board meeting agenda be approved by the Board of Trustees. I'm sorry, I didn't have someone move that before we started discussing it. So Trustee Hodges moves it. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, and all in favor of the emergent changes? Passed. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to D, the declaration of conflict of interest. Yes, Trustee Toon?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a quick notice of motion for the next agenda. I was going to bring it up in the committee of the whole, and I neglected to do that. I apologize. It'd be I can send this to Nikki after. That the recommendation that the board approved Trustee Toon attending bus driver training at his own cost through the division.
Okay.
Just that'll
Notice of motion.
Notice
Thank
of
you.
motion come to a future board meeting. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up that I was bringing that forward as a coach and volunteer at the school. I feel it's important if I'm there to be able to drive, that I would like to do so in a volunteer capacity, but not have it be at a cost to the division, but have the proper training done to enable that through the division. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will make sure that we have that noted. Okay, so item D, the recommendation that the Board of Trustees declare if they have any conflict of interest related to agenda items from the December 14th, 2021 board meeting, and if so, they should declare them now. Seeing none, okay, we will move on to our action items. So we will move on to E1, our quarterly financial report. The Audit Committee met with the LRSD financial team and reviewed the quarterly report ending October 31st, 2021. The Audit Committee will provide a summary of their review process and key findings at the board meeting. The recommendation that the Audit Committee recommends that the Board of Trustees approve the quarterly financial reports as presented. This is being moved by Trustee Hodges, and I will turn it over to her as chair of that committee.
Okay, thank you. I'll just wait for Nikki to bring up the slide. You can go to the next one, Nikki. All right, as the audit committee, we were able to meet last night and we went in depth into our quarterly financial statement. As part of the audit committee, it's our job to ask a lot of questions and monitor this budget. I want to thank our audit committee for everything that they do. There's a lot of great questions asked, and I feel like we are representing our budget appropriately. And so as the report is the end of November 30th, 2021, and it's 25% of our fiscal year and 30% of our school year. We did meet with management, sorry. We had Mr. Perry and Mr. Anthony Burdett join us last night to go over the big picture. And so I will now turn it over to Mr. Perry to take you through the money financial statement parts.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Hodges. So you can go to the next slide. So I'll take you through the numbers as to give you an indication as to where the financial position of the board is currently. So this is based on an accrual-based accounting system. So it is just like it would be at the year end when we do the financial statements. And so that information was brought to you at the last board meeting. Overall, we have $12.7 million in financial assets. That's including cash, accounts receivable, investments, and $8.2 million in liabilities, accounts payable, deferred revenues, and such. That leaves us about $4.5 million in net financial assets. Then you take into consideration your fixed assets, which is $52 million, and that is taking into consideration the net book value of those capital assets, which means you book it at cost and then you amortize it over time. So the net value of that is $52 million. Then you take into account what has been deferred and the revenue that's recognized over the same time period as the capital assets, which is $43.7 million, for a $12.8 million net assets, which is your operating capital reserves and invested in capital assets. That is, you can go to the next slide. That's a $350,000 decrease from where we ended at the year end. So when you look at that 12.8 million, we were 13.1, just over 13.1 million in net capital assets and net financial assets at the end of the year. So you can go to the next one. So it's a $350,000 decrease. And here's how that's made up. Over the first quarter, we had just over $13 million in revenues. That's at 24.4% of the budget, and I'll talk about that in a minute. When you look at the expenditures that were incurred, which was 13.42 million in expenditures, that's 24.4% of that budget. So we end up with a $350,000, and again, that is a mistake on that document. Oh no, it isn't. So 0.35 is 350,000. So 0.35 million deficit is 350,000. When you look at what we budgeted for a almost $1.5 million deficit. And so 25% of that 1.488 is 372,000. We're actually right on target. So within $20,000 range of being where we should be at the end of the first quarter. Now, there's details that make up, so there's some revenue that's above or below, some expenditures that are above or below what you would anticipate they would be. And so we'll go through a little bit of the details of things that we need to continue to monitor over time. So next slide, please, Nikki. So we'll look at the revenues. The revenues, again, is just over 13 million in revenues. Alberta government revenue is actually right on 25%. So the interesting thing is that we get our budget and our Alberta provincial funding in March, and then we have the ability to create the budget. Just a couple things with regards to, even though we're at 25%, there's, like I said, ups and downs. The summer school funding of 96,000 has been deferred to the summer, so it's being deferred and will be utilized in the summer months. So we don't recognize that now until we have expenditures towards that. The offset of that is that we're actually receiving additional funding from the provincial government above what we had originally budgeted, and that's 83,000, so it pretty much offsets that. So it keeps us on target for where we're at. We're actually higher in IMR expenditures up to this point. So IMR is an in and an out. We recognize the revenue at the same rate as we recognize the expenditures. So the reason the revenue is up is because the expenditures to date are higher than the 25%. But of course, we recognize the revenue and the expenditure, so you'll see on the expenditure analysis that it's a net zero. It's recognized as revenue and expenditure. One area where we haven't received funds, but we will, is in First Nation students attending on reserve. That information just goes in at the end of October, and so it takes time for the provincial government to give us the funds that are related to those students that are attending on reserve. And so that basically offsets the increase in the IMR, keeping us at about 25%. So overall, Alberta government funding is where it should be. Other revenues, this is where we have a little bit of work to do, is with regards to tracking fees for schools is very low at this point, only 2%, which is offset by the international funding of being at 66% and the ski academy tuition being at 51%. And then of course, school generated funds are not recorded at this point, and we're working on a process to evaluate those on a quarterly basis so we can take them into account. Overall, that leaves us at about $350,000 lower than where we would have anticipated being at this time. Okay, next slide, please. When we look at the expenditures, through 13.42 million in expenditures, the majority of this is in our personnel, so certificated staffing is slightly over 25%. Certificated benefits is lower. When you take those two together, it's actually right on 25%. And but we anticipate that over time that will be over slightly as benefits will begin to pick up in January. Support staff is slightly over in our salaries at 26.7%, and in benefits it's slightly over as well, which makes sense because there's no increase. Its benefits are even throughout the year. IMR, like I mentioned before, is higher than what 25% would be. It's at 68%, which is an increase of 272,000. But again, that's an in and out. School generated funds is an in and an out, and so it's no impact on the bottom line. Areas where we're identifying that we're under at this point in time would be contracted services, supplies, utilities, PD, and travel. So for the most part, those are the main areas where we have identified that we're under and that we'll have to continue to monitor. So Nikki, do you want to go? Yep, go ahead, Trustee Waitress.
Do the educational assistants tend to be a little bit over as you go through the year because they are not paid throughout the entire year and just over 3 of the quarters, or is that not the case?
For the most part, I mean, we do have some educational assistants that are paid over 10 months, some that are paid over 12 months, so it kind of evens itself out. Transportation is the one where they're paid over 10 months, so the entire transportation budget, other than the coordinator and the admin assistant, are paid over 10 months. And so that would be one of the reasons as to why support staff would be a little higher than the 25%. So thank you for bringing that forward. Given the fact that we've looked at the revenues, the expenditures, we're right where we need to be. There are some things that we need to currently monitor, right? So currently we're en route to hit that budgeted deficit of 1.4 million. But things we'll want to monitor is the fees and sales and services. In the revenue side of thing, we'll continue to monitor the Alberta education, but it should be very close to 25%. It'll increase slightly above 25% once we get to the summer months and we have the summer programming. Expenditures, items that we'll continue to monitor is the staffing budgets, including the average cost of the various positions as well as the number of positions. You have to remember that this budget was created in March, and obviously we don't know exactly what our enrollment will be at the beginning of September, and so additional staff were added in certain areas to accommodate, recognizing that we have reserves that we have the ability to access if we need to in order to meet the needs of students now and at this time. Other areas that we'll continue to monitor and bring to the attention of the Audit Committee, like we did yesterday, is the staffing budgets, average cost positions, services and contracts, supplies, travel and subsistence, and PD, which seem to be the ones that are significantly under. And I think that is it. So that's the details. That's the information that we brought, obviously in a much greater detail to the Audit Committee for them to be comfortable with the presentation that we're providing today. So I'll turn it back to you, Trustee Hodges, I guess.
Thank you. Just a comment around the fees too. The question was asked last night if there were measures in place at the school level to make sure that those fees are monitored closely. And Mr. Burdette and Mr. Perry assured us that they have a lot of good structures in place at the local schools, that the fees just haven't made it up to the board level yet. And so, like we said, we still will continue to monitor those and make sure that everything is up to par. So I would like now to open the floor up to some questions for, if anybody has any questions for the audit committee, or if Trustee Gimber or Trustee Poitras wanted to add anything, as they are also part of the audit committee. Go ahead, thanks.
Yeah, I really appreciate the meeting that we had last night. It was, I remember having meetings in here and going through the fine details, and it's a lot. But it's nice to see all the finer points and get a clear understanding of summer school dollars and different groups being paid over 10 months and 12 months. And after seeing it yesterday, I have no concerns about our budget so far this year. Everything seems to be going as smooth as possible, especially considering some of the decreases that we are facing from government funding. So I was happy to be a part of that and feel very comfortable with where we're at right now based on the information we were shown.
Thank you. Trustee Gimber?
I just want to thank Jeff for presenting last night and going into the detail that he did, because as a new member of the audit committee, I appreciate the additional information for the questions that I had, and I am also very comfortable with what was presented today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank our public members too for participating in our audit committee. It's really nice to have the public's view on our budget and ask some really good questions also. So thank you. Just in closing, we'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Toon.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you to the audit committee for your great work that you always do. Just a question to you would be, is there anything that you've seen with the current update that we should be specifically advocating to our MLA and the government when we have those discussions? I know that a lot has changed, and there was a lot of the funding came later last year than we anticipated, and so that kind of skewed how the numbers and how dollars were spent. Is there anything that specifically came out of this current update that you think we should be speaking to the government about?
Thank you, Trustee Toon.
Thank you for the question. We have already written a letter regarding our FACES, our summer program. So I think that that was one of the things that we can still continue to advocate for. I don't know, I can't think of anything directly right now that we need to push harder for right now. Mr. Perry, was there anything that you recall?
No, you mentioned what I would have identified. We're still waiting for a response back from that letter that the Advocacy Committee sent to the Minister of Education, and that is, like Trustee Hodges said, on holding us harmless from the 2020 year when we had the inability to run the FACES program. Our funding for the summer programming is based on a 3-year average, so when you take that 2020 into account and recognize that we didn't receive any funds toward our funding this year, that is not holding us harmless, and so the recommendation or the question was to hold us harmless for that. So we would hope that the minister would respond, and once we have a response, we would be able to respond, I guess, accordingly.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question, Trustee Toon. Is there any other questions around the audit quarterly financial report for our first quarter? Okay, thank you. So then we will move back to the recommendation that the audit committee recommends that the Board of Trustees approve the quarterly financial report as it has been presented. That was moved by Trustee Hodges. All in favor? Passed. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we are going to just move down to F1, sorry, and we have our delegation here, so we will go ahead and move there and come back to our other action items after we hear from them. So Mr. Broomfield and Mr. Sears' delegation, Mr. Donnie Broomfield and Callum Sears will present to the Board of Trustees on behalf of some concerned Livingston Range School Division parents regarding the motion made at the November 23rd, 2021 board meeting regarding, quote, the COVID-19 vaccination status and testing for harm reduction. So we'd like to welcome them up at this time to come on up to the podium here. Go ahead, Trustee Toon.
Madam Chair, do we want to take a 2-minute break while they get set up and
Sure.
everything?
Yep, if you need a 2-minute break, go ahead.
Thanks.
And we'll bring you guys up. You can get set up and Nikki will show you how to work. Sorry, we just had to get our recording going again. So thank you both for being here and for going through the process to come before us today and share your delegation. We'll turn it over to you for the next 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Everybody can hear me, I guess. Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing us to come speak with you today. My name is Callum Sears, and this is Donnie Broomfield. We both grew up in the Stavely area, and we both have children in the Livingston Range School Division right now. We're here representing a very large group of parents in the Nanton, Stavely, and Claresholm region who have become increasingly concerned with the direction that our school division may be heading with regards to COVID. Every day, our group grows in numbers as we receive calls and texts from more parents who are just now becoming aware of the proposed draft policy regarding the COVID-19 vaccination status and testing for harm reduction. This group of concerned parents consists of vaccinated and unvaccinated parents. We come here, Donnie and I come here in the hope that we can help you decide whether our school division really needs to expand the harm reduction program, as some other school divisions have considered, mandating that all staff and non-employees get vaccinated or have a negative test 72 hours prior to entering a school.
Afternoon, everybody. Year in, year out, on certain days we've all seen our schools with over half of the students absent in November and December due to flu sickness, and not once were we asked to implement a mask mandate or require all adult individuals in the school environment receive a flu shot or to be tested for symptoms before admittance. Now, it's not lost on me that the safety of our kids and your staff while at the school building is of concern of yours. The vaccine-dependent access to our kids while at that school is our main concern. 2 years into this, kids have not been found to be at high risk of suffering negative outcomes from contracting COVID-19. So when Alberta Health Services is falsely pushing people into the death by COVID category, or at least death associated with COVID data, most recently being the death of a boy with terminal cancer whom without a shadow of a doubt at the time of his passing did not die from COVID. That even the most discerning people in positions like yours must have at least some doubt in the information that's being handed down from our experts. These same experts had to retract the report on that specific case in very short order due to backlash from many people who knew otherwise. The same group of experts all the while completely disregards the death of 17-year-old just a few miles south of Ponoka who died within days after his second Pfizer shot because his heart failed him.
So I have a good friend who relayed to me a story about a young girl that goes to school in our school division. This young girl doesn't have a very good home life, comes from a broken family, low income, very unstable home. But when she comes to school, there's a teacher aide that treats her like gold at that school. The aide is the only one in the school who can get through to that little girl and get her to calm down, focus, and start learning. When the other teachers are with her, there's behavioral issues, and she's not focused, not learning. It's the only stable environment that this little girl has, and likely the only time of her day that she can feel good about herself. But this aide isn't getting vaccinated. Maybe for religious reasons, maybe for health reasons. I don't know, and it's none of my business. What I do know is the aide doesn't make enough money to justify a negative test every 72 hours. And this may be hard for our schools to justify paying for as well, especially when we have schools such as ours in Stavely who are currently canvassing our local community groups for essential needs such as paper supplies. Another situation I know about is a special needs student. They have no support at home. Single parent house, low income, multiple siblings. This one doesn't happen to be the favorite. His support system are the teachers in his school. One teacher in particular has really made a connection with this child. And this teacher makes the extra effort to go to this child's extracurricular activities outside the school and support him. It means the world to this kid. But do we know if this teacher's going to be vaccinated? Do we know if they have the means to get testing every 72 hours if they don't get vaccinated, or if they're just going to throw their hands up and go get a job where they can be free to work without a vaccine mandate or a testing mandate? We don't know on that one. The real connection the kids in my two examples here have with teachers is not confined with the boundaries of vaccinated and unvaccinated. These connections they have are building these children into being better and more well-rounded individuals in our society. And I'd like to know, has the school board considered who will pick up the slack when staff are forced to quit? I'm willing to bet the real and long-term consequences on our children are much worse than the potential risks of COVID. Are we willing to let our education system fail these children for a health event that might not occur? Volunteers in our schools are critical, and without volunteers, especially our small schools, the quality of education changes pretty quickly. In Stavely, if the division mandates vaccination or negative testing, right off the bat, we will lose our hot lunch program. I am sure all of you know that there have been countless studies linking hunger and learning. Ask the staff and the volunteers at the Stavely School how many kids come to school without a lunch every day, not just hot lunch day. It's a shockingly high number. And some kids that you think can afford lunch just don't have lunch. It's programs like this, division-wide, that we stand a high chance of losing if this board decides to mandate vaccinations on volunteers. Volunteers are already donating their time to the school. We cannot expect that many are going to start forking over money for rapid tests every 72 hours. But there's no shortage of people, doctors included, who are willing to stand up here and demand that people whom they have never met get the jab. People like my wife. One of the hot lunch volunteers in Stavely, by the way, she got one shot, and she ended up in emergency twice because her heart was acting up in the days following. There's no shortage of documentation on this shot causing heart issues. Yet there are many in our society who still feel the need to demand that she get her second shot. And if she dies, I guess they're okay with my kids growing up without a mother. When my wife's own doctor tells her, I don't blame you one bit if you don't get that second shot because I don't know what's going to happen. It's absolutely shocking to know that there are doctors out there who have never even met my wife, but are more than willing to stand up and tell her that there's no excuse not to get vaccinated. The fact that her antibodies are so high that her risk of actually contracting COVID are extremely low doesn't even seem to matter. Have we lost our way? There have been multiple parents within our group that are unvaccinated that have expressed concerns regarding access to the school to see their own children. For someone who is unvaccinated, there's a financial burden associated with the testing option. These tests can be very expensive, not to mention we are located in a rural area, so there's the other added burden of driving time and costs associated with that travel. For an unvaccinated parent to directly stop by the school to see your child would not be an option. To know that our school board is considering adopting a policy that would restrict such access to kids at our school is absolutely heartbreaking.
Myself, Callum, and many others have had friends and family members suffer many ill effects immediately after taking this vaccine. The list includes loss of vision, long and short-term, dermatological issues from severe rash to open sores forming all around the body, along with many heart and blood clotting issues. All for the greater good, we keep hearing. My wife has chosen not to get this vaccine because of an existing blood clotting issue that already makes daily life a challenge and full of risks. So to hear a doctor tell you that the benefits far outweigh the risks as a general rule for everyone is very hard to accept. Now let's not forget this recurring line, it's for the greater good. With this, I hope that you consider people like my wife, Callum's wife, and so many more while you deliberate on this unprecedented policy permitting access to our kids while at school. Justification is what all of us seek in every decision that we make in our lives, and this subject differs nothing from the past way of making these decisions. As I've already mentioned, in my relatively small circle of friends and family, I'm aware of many serious adverse reactions to this new drug, and I'm one of a large group of people opposed to blanket medical mandates as a whole, all serving to justify my opposition to your draft vaccine policy today. While I know it's worthwhile to consider what direction other boards have gone with this policy, whether casting it aside or implementing it, we're counting on you to do what is best for the division, for this division alone. Bringing us to the statistics related to this issue. You as board members are also looking for justification for the policies you pass down onto us. And I'm looking forward to hearing your local data. And by this, I mean the COVID-19 data from within our school division that has pushed you to consider such a policy that excludes, restricts, and affects the daily lives of parents within this division. Right now, we have a provincial government that's telling us we should restrict visitation in our homes and with our families, whether vaccinated or not. Yet at the same time, we're allowed to attend a 16,000 person concert at the Saddle Dome with loose restrictions on mask wearing and social distancing. Just with this one fact alone, I feel like those in positions like yours should not be the least bit surprised to have viewpoints like ours coming forward. Our government seems to be presenting the vaccine mandate in a way that the unvaccinated people are not doing their part to slow the spread. However, they've been social distancing, wearing masks, reducing or even halting travel, limiting who can enter their households, and not to mention the majority of community events have already been cancelled for almost 2 years now. Life has been altered like never before in the name of public safety, and in this case, workplace safety. As your board discusses policy today, please consider, have we not done enough in the last 2 years? Our children have been masked almost full time, have been told they cannot sing, cannot turn your heads at their desks, to look at a friend without masking, even though distanced. Quarantining multiple times, the list goes on. I think we're losing sight of what we've put our kids through already. We just recorded our kids' virtual Christmas concert yesterday. All kids masked up, no audience, and recorded for online viewing only. But again, we can still go to the Saddle Dome with 16,000 people, shoulder to shoulder. Our staff, parents, volunteers, and kids have made incredible sacrifices, and it's still not enough, and I wonder where it ends.
I think it's a great idea to have doctors come and speak at meetings like this one. It's an opportunity to hear from those who understand epidemiology on a more advanced level than most of us in attendance. But what I feel is not a good idea is when an issue comes in front of your board like the one at hand, and there is not a medical professional sought to speak from both sides of the issue. Now keep in mind, many doctors have already lost their jobs for speaking out on one particular side of this issue. But our main reason here today is to ask that you consider both sides of the issue around the vaccine mandates. And most importantly, all of your school division's parents' views on the vaccine mandates and how it will affect them.
So now, I feel with any opposing argument, I believe it must be accompanied by an alternative recommendation on how to move forward. Knowing now that individuals that have received their vaccine can still transmit this, if this was primarily about the health and safety of all at your schools, then the obvious option would be testing for all who attend twice a week. Hell, even once a week would be a better option. at least for the prevention of infections in our school. In this particular case, given all the existing measures already in place, such as full-time masking, social distancing, cohorts, increases in sanitation measures, contact tracing and notifications, quarantining, restricted visitor access, and virtual viewings of event performances, we suggest that the board does not adopt the harm reduction policy being put forth today. For the sake of our kids and those striving to make school life better for our kids. We thank you all for your time and consideration here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you coming. Like I said, we are so glad that you came to speak to us today, and we recognize that you do represent a large number of parents. When we have delegations come to the board, we accept this information and have an allotted amount of time for clarifying questions. So if there's any trustees at this time who have any questions regarding any of the information that we've received today that could help clarify any concerns or misunderstandings you might have, I would invite you to raise your hand now. Go ahead, Trustee Toon.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today and presenting to us. Just a question, do you have a number on how many parents that you've been in contact with through this?
Go ahead.
It's a lot. It's, we don't have a number right now, but there's groups in Nanton, Staveley, and Claresholm, and they're all speaking with one another now, and it's large.
Thank you. Just while everyone else is just thinking for a minute, I was just wondering, you mentioned that there was a 17-year-old just south of Ponoka that passed away from heart conditions after having a vaccine. Do you know where that information came from, or where you got that information from, and if that death has been attributed to the vaccine, or if that is just something that...
Okay, so like we mentioned earlier, it's friends and family specifically. We
Okay.
didn't want to venture outside of any of that. So yeah, it's just a few miles south of Ponoka, and there's been a little bit of a fight. I don't want to say a fight, but maybe just contesting the issue just because it was within 2 weeks of the vaccination. That there seems to be some lines being blurred there. With the space between your vaccination shot and when you're actually considered to be fully vaccinated. So that issue still has yet to be resolved. So I can't speak any further to that.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you both for sharing your personal experiences as well of friends and family. Is there any other questions from the trustee for clarifying information from what we've heard from these gentlemen today? Trustee Gimber?
Hi, thank you for coming. You mentioned that there's a number of parent volunteers that will not be volunteering anymore if this is put in place. If any kind, do you have a number on how many that would be? An estimate? Any idea? I know you mentioned 2 in particular for the hot lunch program, right?
I'll go first, but right now, right off the bat, it would be 2 for the hot lunch program in Staveley. In these small schools, there's a lot of support from volunteers, and especially in Staveley, I can speak for Staveley because we would have to drive to Claresholm or High River to get a negative test 72 hours ahead of the time we plan to be at the school. And in farming and ranching communities, your trips are planned. You don't run to town every day. So a number of them in Staveley, you could probably say a handful very easily. I don't know, Donnie, do you have a better?
I think you did fine. I mean, a lot of this we've just been working on just the last few weeks here. So I mean, more information's coming to us all the time. I mean, of course, we're closely tied to the Staveley School, but I mean, we'll start finding out more information about the surrounding schools also in the division, and if that's a number you want and whatnot, we can provide it down the line at your next meeting or whatnot. I'm not sure how that is, but just in closing on that, I think considering that even one would quit over such a policy, I think it carries enough weight on its own. But we already know that at our local level in Stavely that the number is more than that.
Okay, thank you. And just for clarity on that point, you said that one would, if even one would quit over a policy being made. Are you saying that the volunteers, if a policy was made, that the volunteers would not come in anymore, or only if they had to be vaccinated? So if there was a policy, say that teachers had to be vaccinated, but maybe volunteers who came in and out of school didn't need to be vaccinated, would the volunteers still come then? Or are you saying if any policy was put in place, these volunteers will not come in because they're against the policy?
I guess without speculation, yeah, I suppose if the policy came down that those parent volunteers did not require the additional burden of the cost and whatnot and the travel time associated with those extra tests, no doubt that would make an impact on their decision for sure. Yeah, you have anything to add to that?
My wife would continue to run the hot lunch program if she wasn't required to be vaccinated or proof of a negative test 72 hours. But if you required all the teachers to be vaccinated and proof of a negative test within 72 hours, I'm not sure how much sense that makes. So,
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the trustees? No? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being here today and for sharing your information and your personal experiences. And when we have a delegation to the board, then you will always receive an acknowledgement and follow-up information to what's been discussed here in writing as soon as possible. So thank you both. Okay. Thank you. So we just have a few minutes before our next delegation. Dr. Gavin Parker will be joining us at 2 o'clock. So I will just remind trustees that you can take notes throughout the delegation if you have clarifying questions like we did at this time, then we could ask those again at the end of his presentation. So we'll just take a few minute break if you need to run to the washroom or get a drink or something, and then hopefully he'll be with us right at 2 o'clock. Yes, Trustee Toon? No, I'm not prepared enough to do that right now. Okay, let me see which action items we got here. Now my papers are all pulled apart. I know. Yep. Oh, we have, oh, there. No, we have Dr. Parker in the waiting room, so. Yeah, we're ready. Oh, you don't need your mask. Okay. Okay. Good morning, Dr. Parker. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear. And I'm just wrapping up one thing, so I'll be back on the line in just 2 minutes. If that's all right.
Thank you very much. Yep. Yeah, the
we're good.
F4 that became E4 that is bumped to the bottom of the agenda.
Yeah, we're good at jumping around on things, so
Okay.
we might as well keep it going.
If everyone is comfortable with that. Okay, we'll take a, yeah, Trustee Yagos.
I'm sorry. You'll have to speak up.
I requested the superintendent presentation next on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Sorry about that. there's been a lot of changes to the agenda and back and forth on certain things today. So we just had our delegations both speak to us, and I kind of checked with the board here and to make sure that everyone feels comfortable. At the beginning of the meeting, Trustee Toon asked to have F4 become an action item, and it became E4, and then it was moved to the bottom of the agenda, but we would like to go ahead with E4 now. And E4 says, Mr. Daryl Seguin, Superintendent, will present a COVID-19 implementation plan and recommendation to the board. However, if it is an action item, is there a recommendation that would come along with that? Trustee Toon?
I see Nikki's put the recommendation out that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation from the superintendent.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So at this time, we will go ahead and have Mr. Del Seguin, our superintendent, present the COVID-19 implementation plan and recommendation to the Board of Trustees. Can I get someone to make that motion? Trustee Gimber? Okay, we'll turn it over to Mr. Seguin.
All right, thank you so much for some time to talk about workplace health and safety in Livingston Range and specifically about the COVID-19 pandemic and the operation of the school division. We've had a couple different delegations and different perspectives shared, and we know that the board has heard many of those perspectives over the past several months, as this has been on our minds for a while. Despite the numerous past and ongoing COVID-19 risk mitigation and health safety measures in place in our school division, the pandemic continues to put a strain on our education system. COVID-19 presents a health risk for staff and students, and it's the responsibility of all school divisions to provide a safe working and learning environment for both staff and students. So COVID has been identified as a workplace hazard, and LRSD has a statutory responsibility to take all reasonable steps to provide safe and healthy working and learning environments. Public health authorities state that vaccination is one of the most effective ways at reducing COVID-19 transmission and protecting against severe outcomes. A proof of vaccination or negative test procedure is a demonstration of our school division's commitment to ensuring all schools and workplaces remain as safe as possible. It's an added safety measure combined with everything else that we're presently doing. So, since the beginning of this school year, our school division has experienced positive student and staff cases. Some of those cases have resulted in hospitalization of staff and visits to the emergency. And staff have been vigilant, I would say, about staying home when showing any COVID-type symptoms, and we've experienced an impact on our school operations at times and in places throughout the division as staff are away due to COVID or COVID-like symptoms. So at times, substitute coverage has been arranged. However, there has been a shortage of substitutes, and internal or staff present that day in the school have had to provide internal coverage. Sometimes that internal coverage has involved our school administrators as well. And so in addition to their administrative responsibilities and their current teaching loads, they've had to go in and cover other classes as well. Last week in particular was extremely bad. I know of one school that 4 out of the 5 days administration was in covering classes due to staff being away and the shortage of subs. We have not had any classes move to online this year. We've been close a few times, but there has to be that criteria of 3 positive cases in a particular classroom within a 5-day period. And so although we haven't been there, we've been very close at times and certainly have experienced, like I said, staff shortages. Since the beginning of the school year, we've averaged about 10 cases a week in our school system of COVID, and that's staff and students combined. So 153 cases so far that we are aware of students and staff with COVID. 18 of those have been staff members. So if we took 4 months, 18 staff members, a little over 4 per month. Dr. Parker referred to a letter that came out in early October from Ministers LaGrange, Education Minister, and Minister Copping, Health Minister. They issued a letter to school divisions in early October, and in that joint letter, it included a renewed call to all school authorities as employers and operators of school facilities to develop policies that require proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test for any adult who enters the school. But this letter excludes the same requirements for students. And we know that in Alberta, a school authority cannot deny students access to education due to their immunization status. So we work closely with our local ATA, Alberta Teachers Association, and CUPE for support staff in many parts of our school divisions. And we know that both the ATA and the CUPE organizations support vaccination of their members. It says there, CUPE has always encouraged our members to get vaccinated at the earliest opportunity for the protection of themselves, their coworkers, and members of the public. And the ATA has also made it clear that they believe those who can, like Government of Alberta or individual school boards, should implement requirements for vaccinations. Back in, I can't even remember when it was now. It was in late October, early November. We ran a survey with our staff, and we had a very good response rate, probably 85–90% response rate. So we had 330 teachers, support staff, 63 bus drivers, so a total of close to 400 out of about 450 employees who took part in that survey. And of those surveyed, a strong majority of staff indicated that they would be willing to get vaccinated, or they are already currently vaccinated. So when we're contemplating the idea of an administrative procedure, and this is what I was asked to do, is to come back to the board with a recommendation and an implementation plan or a timeline. So a draft admin procedure was created in consultation with legal counsel, and it identifies that employees can either provide a proof of vaccination or provide a negative test result. The procedure, if implemented, does not violate any individual's human rights, nor is anything in the procedure against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We've checked that out. Implementing an administrative procedure would be another method to limit risks of transmission and reduce the spread of COVID, and to provide an additional measure of protection to keep staff and students safe while in our buildings and reduce the disruption of student learning to minimize operational impacts due to COVID. An administrative procedure of this nature is considered temporary due to the evolving and dynamic nature of this public health matter, and includes all employees. And employees, and for the definitions that would be in a procedure like this, which is similar to some other school divisions around the province, would also include practicum students that work with us from the universities or the colleges, and volunteers who would work in close proximity to students and staff. So it's also designed in a draft admin procedure that we're contemplating, is it would allow for bus drivers and custodians who work in the evening to be exempt from the procedure, as they have little sustained close contact with students and staff. You can see on there's a few notes. Really, when we're talking about parents, one end of the spectrum of the joint letter or from the ministers is that any adult who enters the school building would be required to provide proof of vaccination or a negative test. And so we've heard the concerns and perspectives of parents around the school division, and we feel that we could still continue to limit large gatherings while this is still a safety concern for our staff and students. And we could still have any parents working as volunteers or coaches, any that are working in close proximity to students, meet the same test as employees. But if parents were just coming into the school to drop something off for their child, or needed to talk to them about something, and they weren't in close proximity to staff or students, then there would be nothing that would prevent them from doing that. Let's see. So on there, I wanted to make it clear that, as I mentioned before, children in Alberta cannot be denied access to education due to their immunization status. So any procedure that we, along with other school divisions, have implemented around the province, students are not. It's not applicable to students unless they are working in a volunteer or a coaching capacity. And then there are some requirements there for them as well. The proposed timeline can certainly be adjusted, but if this was approved today, for example, you could move fairly quickly on any new hires. So any new hires after today, if this was approved, the division could make a requirement to require any new employees to be fully vaccinated before they begin employment with us. You could have an attestation period there that's fairly quick, because that's just a person, an employee, declaring their vaccination status to us. And certainly we've checked all of the FOIP requirements and everything that goes into the privacy rights and everything, and it's within the employee's purview to gather this information. We would have a responsibility, of course, to protect that information and limit the availability of it to those that need to know, just like we would other confidential matters. Given the timeline of when this is, say, adopted, and when you would require employees and others to be fully vaccinated or begin that negative test cycle where they would provide negative test results 2 times a week, you need to give time for those that are unvaccinated to have their first and then their second dose. So that puts that timeline at February 21st. So that is a brief overview, a recommendation from administration, and a potential timeline that I think is reasonable, given that this would be new, but it's not something that has not been done elsewhere in the province, and certainly in our zone. We have 10 school divisions in Zone 6. 8 of those have moved forward already and approved a proof of vaccination or a negative test result, and then if you include our neighbors to the north, Foothills School Division has something in place as well. Different school divisions have interpreted, I guess, or put in requirements in their administrative procedures a little bit differently. Some are moving very strictly to any adult in the school division, requiring the proof of vaccination or a negative test result, and others have found a balance, kind of like what I'm presenting here in a recommendation. So with that, I think I'll close the presentation, and if there are any questions that I or members of my team might be able to answer, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you so much for that presentation. As this is not a delegation, we can't ask questions. So is there any trustees who have questions for Mr. Sequin regarding the presentation at this time? Go ahead, Trustee Gimber.
Hi, thank you for the information. I'm curious about the rationale for having all new employees must be vaccinated instead of allowing them also the COVID rapid test option.
Yeah, this is something that in discussions with our legal counsel, there are operational costs as well to I guess, consider other types of options. It's not that it can't be in place, but moving forward, if we had a requirement for staff, and the ideal is to be vaccinated, that is free, and as you've heard from Dr. Parker, the side effects and complications and all those sorts of things are minimal, certainly not to minimize, I guess, the impact of those who have had adverse experiences. That is out there as well. But this is more of an operational concern going forward, is in consultation with legal, just that this would be the best way to move forward. That's what their recommendation is.
Thanks, Trustee Gimber. Go ahead.
And just a follow-up to that, it's my impression that in a rural division, it's difficult to find teachers and retain them. So I'm just wondering if that was, how that was considered, because I'm sure it was, in that rationale.
Yeah, we have, in our survey that we administered, very few, like I said, probably of the teachers and support staff that were surveyed, 90% had indicated that they would be vaccinated or already vaccinated. So we didn't ask very specific questions, we left it a little broad. And so of the 330 responses, I think there were probably 10 or so who indicated that they might take a leave of absence, because that would be an option as well. Others had agreed that they would provide the negative COVID tests. Very few, I think maybe 2, if I recall the stats correctly, had indicated that they might leave their employment or something like that. So very few. It seems like we have a lot of compliance or agreement in moving forward with a vaccination procedure for members of our employees of our school division. There are substitutes out there for sure, but given the timing, I guess, with the pandemic year and the fact that all school divisions in the area often draw from the same subpool, that's where it can create some issues too. So, for example, substitutes that we get from Lethbridge are working in our school division, but they're also working in 5 other school divisions. And so at times there is a shortage, especially to the more far-reaching parts of our school division, to get subs. But as far as applicants for new positions, and maybe our Deputy Superintendent Richard Feller might have more to add, but if I recall, we haven't had a shortage of applicants out there. It's more the substitutes where we run into some shortages.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just close. Yep. If someone was on a leave of absence, or someone did, resign over something like this, we feel confident at this point that there are replacements, people looking, that would fill in on a temporary basis, to finish out the school year. But the impact of that seems to be, from our survey, seems like it would be very minimal.
Thank you, Trustee Seguin. Just as we're having this discussion, I would like to recuse myself as chair. If I could have Mr. Perry jump in to chair this, and just with that information, I'll let you know that you have Trustee Stanguitz next, and then Trustee Hodges, Trustee Yagos, and I'd love to be in the line as well before Trustee Toon. So, thank you.
You may have to remind me of the order, but I walked in just after this discussion had began. The motion on the table is the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation from the superintendent. That's on the table? Okay. Okay, so Trustee Stanguitz.
I was just wondering, Mr. Seguin, if you have an accurate number of the volunteers in the Livingston district.
Volunteers, no doubt, are a big part of our school division in rural Alberta. As our delegation mentioned, they're a huge part of our schools, and we are grateful for the service that they provide and allowing us to be able to run more robust programs and just better supervision, everything else. Having said that, I would say in most parts of our school division during the pandemic, volunteers have been very limited, right? Because there's already been restrictions, and so our principals have been directed, and this comes from Alberta Health and that sort of thing, to use volunteers sparingly during this time. So this procedure would be, like I mentioned, it's meant to be a temporary measure. It's another added measure to provide for the safety of our staff and students. And so, the volunteers right now, valuable, but we've been using them on a limited basis just to try and reduce the number of outside contacts in the school setting. So an accurate number of volunteers presently, or on any day. I couldn't tell you. All I can tell you is they've been a very valuable part of our school division, and we're very grateful for them, but their use has been more limited during the pandemic than previously.
Yeah, I was just wondering what that would look like with the volunteers, or whether they would have to only be admitted if they were declaring their status, or...
So again, it would have to be maybe on a case by case. Certainly, if they're working in close proximity to staff or students, then they would need to either show proof of vaccination through this procedure or a negative test. If, for example, the school was doing a Terry Fox run and there was a volunteer on the corner, you know, watching traffic kind of thing, and they're, you know, outdoors and the students are just kind of going by and they're for the safety, just directing traffic, they may not need to be anything in that case, right? Because they're not in close sustained contact with students or staff. So that would have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Trustee Hodges now.
Thank you. I have two questions, but I'll just ask one right now and then it can come back to me maybe after everybody else has had an opportunity. I just have a question around and maybe you can't answer this for me or not, but around the pandemic. So if this is made into an admin procedure, is this something that is going to carry forward now for years, or is this something that's only being put in place because we're in a pandemic? I guess I just want to know if that's, is this a short-term thing, or is this something that we're looking at as a long-term, this is what our school division, if this is passed, what this is going to look like?
Yeah, in a draft procedure such as this, when other school divisions have moved forward with something like this, at the end of those procedures, it talks about this being reviewed frequently, at the very longest every 6 months. But ideally, what would happen is the education minister and the health minister who issued the letter strongly encouraging school boards to implement these policies. Ideally, when the situation subsides sufficiently, they would also write a letter saying, okay, now, you know, this added measure is no longer necessary. That would be the most ideal situation. We'll have to wait and see what happens there, but I think, you know, taking a look at our local circumstances as well would be important. The way this pandemic has been going in waves, though, you would hate to, you know, if it was implemented, to pull it away too quickly as well. So you'd probably want it in place, you know, like I say, if it was fully implemented in February, you'd probably want it in place for the rest of the school year, unless we received more direction from the ministers advising us that that was no longer necessary. There's lots of things to consider. I mean, we're in a local public state of emergency right now. Would removing that be a trigger to remove a policy like this? I don't know right now all of those things that would be required to pull this back, say. But ideally, a follow-up letter from the ministers would carry a lot of weight, I think, and because we've been following, you know, their advice and guidance through this pandemic. And so, yeah, I hope that answers your question. It is meant to be temporary, though.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Trustee Yegas now.
Yeah, I have really two questions. First of all, within this, have you looked at any exemptions? Have you detailed any exemptions, or is this?
There are some categories for like medical exemptions and that sort of thing, but as Dr. Parker mentioned, that's the same message that we've heard, that there are very few circumstances that meet the criteria. But certainly, we would accommodate, as we would at any other time, to the point of undue hardship. And so if an individual, an employee or otherwise, had, you know, an exemption, qualified for an exemption, we would try to accommodate to the point of undue hardship.
Thank you. And I want to thank you all for who put this together. It was done a lot of work on this. My other question was, if a staff member decides to go for the testing, and I'm talking teachers and support staff only here, of course, and I don't know if the support staff would fall under this, but is it going to be their responsibility, or is there any way that they could get tap into to get money to pay for this? I guess I'm saying.
Yeah, and different school divisions across the province have taken different approaches to this. Some have started out paying for the tests for a certain period of time, and my understanding is those are more school divisions that have moved pretty quickly to implement something like this, and so maybe even before you could get your second shot and be fully vaccinated. But there are school divisions that have paid for the tests, give notice that they're paying for them for the next 8 weeks, and then after that, they're the employees' cost. There are others that are putting all the cost on the employees right now. And the rationale there, I guess, or the thought is vaccinations are free, and it's proven to be safe and effective and recommended as a health mitigation measure here. And that's the best way kind of out of this. We've heard all of that. And so that option is available, and unless there's some reason why, due to some, medical reason why or others, a reason why that an individual cannot be vaccinated, we would have to take a look at that on an individual basis. But for the majority of people, the vaccination is free and is proven to be safe over time. And so that's the approach of those school divisions. A school division can't even apply for the free test kits, is my understanding, unless they have an approved procedure in place. So there are a lot of different circumstances. The procedure that I'm recommending here, based on our survey and our circumstances, is that given the notice, the costs would be on the employees after February 21st or whatever it is there, to bear the cost of that. We think there's going to be very few that would need to have the negative COVID tests. We have checked into the pharmacies in our school division. The price does vary from $20 to $40 or a little bit more than that, I think, in a couple of our towns or communities. And I think the only community where we were unable to find someone to do the rapid tests was in the Crow's Nest Pass. So again, it would depend on how many people that involves, but our approach right now is thinking that the costs would be employees' costs. Sufficient notice is given.
Okay. Thank you. Did you have a point of order, Trustee Toon? No. Okay, so I have Poitras and then you. Okay. So Trustee Poitras.
Thank you so much. So I just wanted to make sure I heard correctly that so far this year we have had no classes need to move to online learning based on a number of COVID cases per class. We have not had that.
No, we've been very close, and administrators have been watching very closely for that next case to come in, because we were right there. One more. Yep. The next day, we would have been in that situation. But fortunately, no. We've been close, but we've backed off of it.
Okay. And then also just want to make sure that it looks like the vast majority of our teachers are already vaccinated. When we did that survey, it looked like it was upwards of that 85–90%.
So you have to think of the way the question was worded was something like, if the division implemented a procedure requiring proof of vaccination or negative COVID test, would you provide negative tests, get an exemption, take a leave of absence? Or it was on the same line, it was, I'm already vaccinated or I would be vaccinated. So they're kind of grouped together. So I couldn't tell you exactly, how many are presently vaccinated and how many would get vaccinated, because they were grouped together. We didn't want to gather more information than we needed to respect individuals' privacy and that sort of things. But yes, 90% of those in the teacher support staff category indicated that they are either already vaccinated or would be vaccinated if the division put forward a policy.
Okay. So if this policy was put into place, it feels like maybe the biggest negative impact would come from cutting down on the subs that we might be able to access. If they're subs that are, we already have such a tough time finding subs. If we made it only vaccinated, that might be harder. And then also the number of volunteers that we would have in the school. Would those maybe like be the two biggest impact areas that I know we have heard a lot from our teachers that it's a struggle. Everyone's having a hard time. There's a lot of weight to carry, you know, with struggling through the pandemic and kids struggling. And I know that volunteers and having those subs available is one huge help. And so if this was implemented and like, is that a concern that taking that sub pool even smaller and removing volunteers again from the schools that are unvaccinated, that that would once again put that strain up higher? I'm not asking for your opinion, or you know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but when you look at it, does it feel like those might be the two places that it would be most impactful, would be with the number of subs and the number of volunteers able to come in the school? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anytime you put in a little more restrictive measures,
Yep.
There is a risk of, you know, losing some people to be able to do that.
Okay.
I guess we have to weigh that against the benefits for, you know, the majority, I guess, and meaning numbers of students and staff that work every day in that environment. One thing I will add, certainly, you know, being a former phys ed teacher, I understand the importance of athletics, and a former athletic director in my school as well, that in rural Alberta, staff as well as your community coaches are really valuable, and you appreciate the work and the sacrifice that they're doing. Right now, when our coaches go to other school divisions, there are requirements there for, in some school divisions, for any adult, whether they're coaching or not, to already provide the proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test. So even in our own school division, if you go to you know, Holy Spirit in St. Mike's, and so Matthew Halton has one set of rules, and including for coaches and volunteers, but you walk into Holy Spirit and it might be something different. And so our coaches would already have, at least my feeling is, our coaches would already have that experience when they take their teams to school division to play other schools outside of our school division at this time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Toon.
Thank you. Want to reiterate what others have said about appreciation for you, Mr. Seawan, putting this together, the countless hours that has been involved in working on this is just off the charts. I can really see that you've gone above and beyond trying to find something that can be is best palatable to local needs and context. Personally, I still, the motion that we have on the floor, I have to speak against it. Hearing from parents more on this than any other issue in the 8 years I've been a trustee, as many others have had. There's so many things that have impacted our kids in our communities over the last year and a half, 2 years. And our schools and our staff, our principals and our teachers have gone above and beyond to keep our kids as safe as possible. And I think that we're doing that, meeting those needs with current conditions that we have. With the minister and the health and education writing letters asking us to do this, they just passed the political football on to us. If they wanted to do this, they could have done this with a stroke of a pen, and they chose not to. Instead, downloading this onto 61 boards and making us pay all the legal fees and dollars, taking away out of classroom and time and resources to make this decision. We're not health experts, as we've said before. We want what's best for our kids in our community and our schools, but I think that we can see that not making the decision for the last 3 months hasn't adversely affected our schools. When others made the decision 3 months ago and had it implemented for that time, we're not seeing the higher cases in our areas that we are in other places. So for me, that's part of the rationale is to not implement this at this time. If further data or information comes out from the province, we can come back and revisit that, even with a no vote. We're not held to not voting on this again if it's struck down. That if further details and information come forward at a later date, we can address this, and that would be my thoughts and feelings. Let's not table this. Let's not move this to a further meeting. We've had a lot of great discussions. Admin has worked on this a lot, but we're creating a lot of anxiety with our parents and our families and our staff, not knowing what's going to happen with this. And I feel that we have the information we need to make a decision today, and I would ask that you vote no on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Toon. I have Trustee Long next.
I'll let them go first, please.
Okay, Trustee Poitras.
Sorry, I have a question around, this is just clarity. So the motion that is on the floor is that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation from the superintendent. Are we accepting this recommendation as information, or are we accepting it and asking them to move forward with it? I need a little bit of clarity regarding what exactly it is that we are voting on here today. We are having a lot of discussion around what this would look like, the positive and negatives, but with Trustee Toon's last comments, I'm not sure that I'm on the same page that he is on what exactly we're voting on. So if I could just get some clarity on what exactly this means.
Trustee Gimber, you made the motion. Do you want to make any comment on that? Or are you in the same position?
Honestly, I don't think I really knew what I was making the motion about. I understood that I was just kind of putting it on the agenda to be discussed when I made that motion. Okay. So,
Trustee Toon, do you want to speak to that comment, that question?
Yeah, thank you. The trustees accept the recommendation. The superintendent is recommending for us to implement this admin procedure. Technically, admin procedures can be enacted without board approval, but we requested that this come back to the board, and specifically in our last motion used the word recommendation. So this is a recommendation, and we'd be approving that recommendation. So if this passes, this would be enacted. If this does not pass, this would not be enacted.
Okay, thank you. As long as we're all on the same page with that, then thank you.
Yeah, everyone have the same understanding now? Okay, Trustee Hodges. So we are still speaking to the motion of accepting this as a recommendation from the superintendent. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. I just have another question just for clarity around this. You stated in your presentation that we are having about 4 teachers per month off on a leave due to COVID, I'm assuming. How long are their leaves? And I know that our budget is at the highest ever for sub-cost. And so it is impacting us in this school division, having COVID in the schools. So I just wonder, when the teachers are off, how long are they off for? And what does that look like? Yeah, and how did compare to other years? Like, yeah, because it's like last year we didn't have this, but it was the same lines comparably.
In some ways, this year is, well, in many ways, this year has been more difficult. Trying to run a normal school year, or as much as normal of a school year. Still during the pandemic. Last year it was a little more black and white. There were, more clear directions from the province and AHS on how we're to handle some things. So last year we did not expend what we had budgeted for in terms of subs, right? Many more classes were moved online. More people were quarantined for a period of time, and so at times, even though the teacher wasn't in the school, they were able to continue instruction from home, and the whole class was maybe at home as well, or a combination of both. So to answer your question, it's difficult, but when an individual tests positive for COVID, there's 10 days from the last day they were infectious while at school that they cannot be in the school. Now that's 10 calendar days. So, you know, to say for sure how much time they're missing is difficult. It just depends on when they tested positive and when the last day they were in the school. But it is 10 days from the time that they were last in the school. Now, we have those staff members who've tested positive. Some are staying out, of course, those 10 days, and others are taking longer to recover fully and feel well enough to be able to return. We've got a situation, you know, presently where the individual's been out longer than that. Some have been out 3 or 4 weeks, you know, maybe longer. It depends on the individual case. So we've got that factor in our sub-costs for teachers and support staff, but then we still have, if a staff member goes through that daily checklist and has any of the symptoms on there, then they could be staying home as well because they have symptoms, not necessarily because they have COVID, but they have symptoms. And so they would go get tested or follow the guidance of that document. And so they are missing more frequently, I would say, this year than last year with COVID-like symptoms. And maybe, I don't know for sure, but you know, last year we heard in the province there was like 0 flu cases or something like that, whereas this year maybe there are some. And so while it might not be COVID, it might be, you know, mimicking the flu symptoms a little bit more, and so people are still away. But we are, our teachers sub costs have been more this year. I think our support staff were a little less. Is that correct? Do you remember? We looked at some data last month.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So I think teachers' costs were a little higher this year, were more than in the past, whereas the support staff were a little under.
For subs specifically.
Thank you, yes.
You,
Can I just ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So in retrospective, listening to the teachers and how long they're being off, does that not then disrupt student learning? I mean, student learning already is disrupted because of COVID, and when teachers are gone for extended periods of time and you're getting new teachers in and then they're gone, it's really disruptive, I think, to the students. And so I also wondered too, you brought up the checklist. So if everyone's vaccinated in our school division, then, or negative test or however this looks like, then does that checklist still apply?
These might be better answered by more qualified health individuals, but there was a time last year too where if you were double vaxxed, then I think if I remember correctly, you didn't have to quarantine, and it was only if you were unvaccinated, then you had to quarantine, and the length of time was different. So these are constantly evolving and changing. As far as I understand right now, whether you are vaccinated or unvaccinated, if you have any of those symptoms on there, is that right, Richard? then you must not be at work. Yeah, unless they're, you know, due to allergies or other known issues. But
okay, thank you. I have Trustee Yegas.
Thank you. At this point, I'm not going to be asking, that now that we open this up to discussion and that on this recommendation, first of all, my understanding is that if we vote no on this, then this cannot come back again this year. We'll have to put it in another way until the next organizational meeting, because we can't keep bringing it up all the time. Now, keeping in mind that this is an admin procedure, this is not a board policy, so this is not really our sandbox. What we are doing is supporting the superintendent and central office in this procedure, that we agree with what they are doing. So given that, I just want to make some comments in terms of, we don't know what's going to be happening with this current, with COVID-19. We've got another variant coming on. If we look at Quebec and Ontario right now, it is starting to spread rapidly. In fact, Kingston had to close down most of the city right now. This is going to come here. It is here. How this is going to affect us, we don't know. So are we going to wait until something else happens? Or are we going to make some kind of way that we can protect our students and our staff? There aren't, there aren't that many staff that aren't doing it. There are ways that they could get to help, by presenting that. I think this is, and another thing that was brought up, which really concerns me, is that if a child happens to contact it from some adult who isn't vaccinated, they go home, they've got a huge group of people, including older people, that can contact it. And this new variant, vaccinations might not, be a protection. You might not get as sick. I really think we should look seriously at supporting this recommendation, which our central office has spent a lot of time on, which we've looked at. I know we've had things on both sides of it, but I think we have to look at protecting not only our children, but our staff. And as Trustee Hodges said, we don't need any more disruptions in student learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Yegas. Trustee Stankiewicz, did you have anything? No? Okay. So then I have Trustee Long. You're going to let Trustee Poitras go? Okay, Trustee Poitras.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to get clarity on a few things. One, I know it's an admin procedure, and so it's not technically our sandbox, but it's also not their sandbox to have to be making a medical decision like this, which goes back to the government pawning it off on us, which is very disappointing and upsetting and inappropriate. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then from what I understand, according to Robert's Rules of Order, when something is voted down or for, it can't come back to the floor for a year unless there is new information brought forward. Is that understood by everyone? That's correct also. So if this was voted down today, then new information came forward, all of a sudden 5-year-olds who get it die within 24 hours, something weird, then we would then be able to revisit it. Is that correct? That's new information? You think no? Okay, so I'm still not 100% clear on that.
Typically, there has to be something that changes significantly in the what the original motion was providing. So I guess you'd have to get a legal opinion as to whether it could come back or not based on the change that has been made and whether somebody could appeal that or not. So, but at this point, that would be my understanding. Something would have to significantly change in what the intent of this is trying to do. So.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. I'm going to go to Trustee Toon, and then Long will go back to you. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. No, I appreciate the discussion and the anxiety everybody's feeling about wanting to do what's best for kids and staff. I think we're all coming from a good place and good heart on this issue. I appreciate the work and discussion that we've had as trustees. This is a hard one because we've had a lot of discussion because of the legality and sensitivity of this issue. There's been not discussion, but information given to us in camera on this. And so it might feel like some publicly that we haven't talked about this when we've been receiving information and hearing from what's happening in other jurisdictions. So that's something that I think is important to consider in all of this. Seeing what other jurisdictions have done, things can change at the drop of a hat. Others that had gone with no implementation have gone forward with some, and some that had started with volunteers included in their aspects have gone back from that after seeing the ramifications on what that would look like for their schools. So there is always an opportunity. The Robert's Rules of Order is just to keep in place if I lose a motion that I brought forward bringing it up at the next meeting and stopping the work of the board from going forward. That it's not there to hamper big issues or things that need to be readdressed. We've had motions rescinded that as this board table that have moved forward and already had work done on them. So there's always a way if we need to move forward on something like this, we can do that. We don't have to say that this is final for a year. That just goes against everything that governance is all about. So I would say one of the things that I find challenging in this, the survey that we did had high numbers, but the vaccinated and proof of vaccination were on the same line. I understand why that was done that way for legal and information reasons. But people answering yes to that question weren't fully aware of what that would look like. Would that be paid for personally? Would that be provided through for work? Would that be available in their community that they live in or work in? So I think for all those reasons, that just the unknown of what the ramifications and how this could adversely affect our kids and our schools and our staff, that's for me why I'm saying no to this at this time. If new information comes out, like the mask mandate, we voted no to have a mask mandate at the start of this year in September. And lo and behold, in October, we had a mask mandate. So things change. The government can change their mind. But for me, I think that this is the best direction to move forward would be no on this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Toon. Trustee Long.
We brought up the comment a few times about the adversity to our students due to COVID. And I wonder if Superintendent Seguin could respond to this before I make another statement. And that's the fact that, or possibly it's a fact that if a teacher has COVID, that we have students then that are not attending class because they're aware that their teacher had COVID, and therefore they may have been exposed to it. So they're staying home for a few days. Can you comment on that, please?
That's one of those things that would be, best answered, I guess, at the school site. I don't know for sure. I haven't heard, I guess I have heard that out of an abundance of caution, some parents have kept their kids home at times when numbers in a school are a little bit higher. I've certainly heard that.
Mr. Chair, I call the question.
Okay, did you have a comment? You had your hand up first. Okay, I'm gonna allow Trustee Kimber to comment, and then we'll look at calling the question.
Mine is not a question. I just want to make a statement. I believe that I'm here representing my stakeholders and working for the best for the whole division. I haven't seen anything from them asking for the mandate and vaccination status to be put in place. In fact, I've seen hundreds of emails asking us not to. Alberta is in a state of emergency as of until today. Who knows what they're going to do as of midnight tonight? COVID, yes, is a danger, and according to OHS, LRSD does have a responsibility to mitigate COVID harm. Policies have been put in place, the hand washing, sanitizing, extra hand cleaning, all of that stuff. It is proven that it's working. We don't have increased cases that I have seen. So this administration procedure will have a negative impact on our volunteer programs at our schools, as demonstrated by our delegations today. And in many cases, these programs are the highlights in the students' days. Shutting them down, even as a temporary measure, will definitely have an impact on the mental health of our students. And given that harm reduction is already in place, functioning well, I will be voting against this.
Actually, I think I'm going to call the question. Trustee Long.
Like the vote to be recorded, please.
You betcha. And the mover of the motion has been given the last ability to speak to the motion. So I will call the question. So if you vote in favor, you are voting that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation from the superintendent. Okay, everybody understand what that means? Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation from the superintendent, do so. Okay, it is defeated. I should say all those opposed. It's a recorded vote. Okay, the motion is defeated. I will move the chair back to Trustee Poitras.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all the trustees for their involvement in that discussion, for the hours that have been spent from administration, from all trustees, and from many other outside groups to influence this decision that we were unfortunately put in. And so I want to thank everyone for being a part of this. I'm sure no one knows where we're at in the agenda, but I'm going to go back to action items E2 and move to the committees of the board. So thank you guys all for bearing with us as we've jumped around a bit today. In response, I'm moving to E2. So in response to Trustee Hodges' November 23rd, 2021 notice of motion, Trustee Hodges will discuss the composition of the J.T. Foster Modernization Ad Hoc Committee, and the recommendation is that the Board of Trustees approve the changes proposed to the J.T. Foster Modernization Ad Hoc Committee. Can I get someone to move that? Trustee Hodges will move that, and then I will put it to you. Trustee Hodges, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At our committees, this has always been a committee of the board. In the past, we have always had just 2 members of the ward on there and then the chair. But in our new ward review, we now have 3 trustees in Ward 2, and then it would also be the chair, which leaves 4 members on this committee, which will then have voting stance. So I think that we need to move that this either be moved down to 2 committee members with the chair as the ex officio, so that we are back down to 3 members.
Thank you, Trustee Hodges. I'd like to open that up for some discussion and see what everyone thinks about that. Yeah, Trustee Yagos?
I think the people who should be concerned with this, and I agree with Trustee Hodges, is the ones who are on this, whatever kind of composition they would like this to be themselves. So I think right now we should hear from this ward what they think.
Yeah, thanks, Trustee Yagos. Is there any thoughts or comments from Trustee Toon?
So to clarify, that would be 2 members and then the chair would be that. I think I'd be fine with that. And as stated earlier, I've been on this before since the start of this. I could serve on it for a year and then move off to allow one of the other ward members to have a chance at it, just so once we get it up and running again and meet with Nanton. I think this is a really important thing. It continues to be our priority, and I know it is for the Mayor and Council and Nanton as well. So we want to make sure that in the new year we get a chance to meet with them, and I would be fine with stepping back and allowing the other 2 on our ward to do and support this. I think it's important also to have the chair there, just from the standpoint that them being the spokesperson, and this is a huge advocacy piece for our board.
Thank you so much, Trustee Toon. We'll go to Trustee Hodges.
Sorry, Trustee Toon, did you say you wanted to stay on it right now? Like, I think it's important for you to be on this committee for the rest of this year for sure, because we have 2 new members and just 1 new member on there along with the chair, just for the history and everything that's happened.
Yeah, for clarity, I said from our discussion on committee of the whole, there was others that said they would stay for a year and then allow the others to switch off reps. I would be willing to do that as well, stay for a year, get the operation up and running again and meet with our Nanton reps, and then allow the other trustee who isn't in our ward on it to have a chance at it at our next organizational meeting.
Thank you so much. Is there any comments from the other Ward 1 trustees? Yep, Trustee Stankiewicz.
I'm just passionate about this project, and I hope that we can continue to move forward. And if it's necessary, could one of us, as there's 3 representatives in our ward, be an observer role and non-voting with that? No? Okay, never mind.
Carla. Trustee Gimber. Yeah,
I don't know how to ask this. I would like to step off of that committee then, and then allow the two from Nanton and somebody with experience to be on there with the chair.
Thank you, Trustee Gimber. Okay, so if there's no other discussion around this motion, I'm seeing none. Did you want to amend the motion to include, okay, I'll let you go ahead and do that, Trustee Hodges.
Okay, thank you. I would like to amend the motion that the Board of Trustees approve Trustee Toon and Trustee Gimber to be on the JT Foster Modernization Ad Hoc Committee. Oh, sorry, Stankiewicz, not Gimber. Sorry.
Thank you so much. So this is in response to the notice of motion that came forward on November 23rd, and it now reads that the Board of Trustees approve Trustee Toon and Trustee Stankiewicz to sit on the JT Foster Modernization Ad Hoc Committee.
Sorry, just do we also need to have that the board will be ex officio? Just for
With
clarity?
board chair.
No? Okay.
With board
Nope.
chair as ex officio. They always are unless it's otherwise stated, so that's perfect. Okay, so all in favor? That's passed. Perfect. Okay, we're now going to move on to E3. We are not at the 1:30 time slot, but that's okay. So this is board policy. The Policy Review Committee Chair, Clara Yagos, will provide an update regarding Board Policy 9, Committees of the Board, and Board Policy 10, Board Representatives. Can I get someone to make that motion? Trustee Yagos, I also will just, yeah, I'll just let her speak to it as going through it now, reading through it would just be doing what she is going to do next. So I will turn it over to her. That motion was made by Trustee Yagos, and I'll let her start.
Sorry. Policy 9, Committees of the Board. Just on the preamble in that, and this is all put into your on your list here, and I'll just go over where it stands. There's one that hasn't been put in that we did change. Okay, on the 4th paragraph, it said, once all committee memberships are determined, committee chairs and recording secretaries will be named through a nomination process within each committee. The new part, the former committee chair may join the first committee meeting for transitional purposes, and terms of references should be reviewed. And I guess this is something that I really want to stress, is that on your first meeting or fairly soon, just to make sure you're going through your right terms of reference, okay? The second one, which isn't on here, but we did change, it was the next paragraph that said, the board chair, at his or her discretion, shall act as an ex officio member of all committees, with the exception of the Labor Relations Committee and the Audit Committee. Now, at this point, I think this isn't an issue, but it could be an issue in the future if the chair isn't on the committee. I guess if anybody has any questions or things that they disagree with, please put up your hand, or, if you have comments, because I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. Well, as quickly as I can. Okay, the next one is, and this perhaps is the Planning Committee, the Committee of the Whole. What was this one? I'm sorry, I'm trying to do this as we have on our list here. I'm just going to go for the changes that we have, number 3. The order of the committees should be as follows. The Audit Committee will change from item C to item E, and the reason for this is, well, we'll see. The Planning Committee of the Whole will change from D to item C, which The First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and LRSD Liaison Committee from item E to item F, and the Regional School Council from item F to item D. And this is just to make it a little bit easier when we're looking through them so that they all come into logical order. The Audit Committee, which isn't on there right now, it has to recommend board remuneration to the Audit Committee under the powers and duties. And that would be item E. Okay. The Regional Council of Student Leaders has to be changed to the Livingston Leaders in our policy. Wasn't done. And under the Livingston Leaders, the membership will be removed from all trustees to an advisor and one alternate. In the past, we had all trustees, and now we've talked about changing it to the advisor and one alternative. Okay. Under 7, for the 2 committees that really don't meet that often, we're putting them at the end, and we're going to say that all trustees, rather than 3 trustees, will be removed, and that all board members as alternatives in the appeal committee purpose membership, and then the same with what's going to happen with the discipline committee, and then all committees would be, okay, I'm sorry, I got that a little confused here. I'm just going to go to that. I can't, oh, there it is. Yeah. It'll be the membership, all trustees with 3 trustees, 1 as chair, called as needed. Okay, and that's the same it's going to be put with the discipline committee. So that we'll name 3 trustees, but 1 will be a chair, and they'll be called as needed. I don't know if is that what we said? Who's on the committee with me?
So all trustees are on these, and when something comes up for the discipline or the appeal committee,
3 will be called.
3 are called as needed.
Yep, yeah.
And 1 will be assigned as chair to be in charge of organizing the meetings and whatnot.
Yeah, and the same thing with the discipline committee. And those are going to be at the end now. And the advocacy committee, I have on there, oh, where is this one? I've got to go to that one, I'm sorry. The advocacy committee. Oh, yeah, that has to be reviewed because it's not in the same way with the roles and responsibilities and that as the other committees. So could we please ask who's ever on the advocacy committee to go through that? And I know this is, yeah, we have to format it the same way, okay? Now, these are, I know, just a lot of housekeeping things that we did for this meeting, and there's other things that we're still going to have to do. The next one is going to be it's going to be committee, the policy 10. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired here. So for policy 10, which is the board representation, there is some changes we did do there. For the Alberta Southwest Regional Alliance, under the purpose in that, we did add 1 trustee assigned as contact. which we agreed upon as a board. Under the Livingston Ski Academy Society, under membership, we will say both from Ward 2, because that's where the one would be the member and the other the alternate. Item 5, the Pincher Creek Community Early Learning Center will be, we have to include that one. And I guess we haven't made any decision how we're going to be working that. Do we have to make a decision on that one? Whether it's going to be, what kind of role it's going to be? In a you
I'm
know,
the chair.
formally?
Okay. Sorry, I was raising my hand for Jeff to call on me. He's not here. I'm the chair. Okay, so the Pincher Creek Community Early Learning Center came and discussed it with us, but we have not, yeah, we haven't formally written a letter. However, it will be moved to a, yeah, it's being moved to an advisory role. And so once, I mean, that's confirmed now with us, so it can be, as long as it's talking about the advisory role, then we can go over, but I can do that as the advisor. I can go through this and double check that all the purposes and everything are what they should be now.
And that probably should come to the board so that we
Yes.
could make a motion on that. It
Yeah.
hasn't come up to this point, so we will just leave it. We have added it. We'll have to leave it until the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Then we'll ask for you to bring that up. And then finally, the community as a classroom, school as a base camp. We need to have for that one the frame of reference for that, the purpose, powers and duty, membership, meetings. And I think we have come up to some decisions on that. Well, I shouldn't say decisions, I'm sorry. What that group, the person now who's in charge of that group is going to have to come with a motion next time for the frame of reference and for what we decided, okay?
Yes.
Because all we have on here is just that they need the purpose, powers and duties, etc. Is there any comments or anything on those?
Thank you, Trustee Yagos. We have a comment from Trustee Hodges.
I just have one comment under the PCCELC. We already had a motion that we were going to be advisory. We had the presentation from them come forward. The letter still needs to be sent back to them stating where we were, but the motion was already brought forward that we were in advisory role, so now it just needs to be cleaned up in policy.
Okay, thank you. I'll just make a note of that. Okay, there are still some things that we have to talk about. We ran into some issues here with time for this committee. And one of the things we're going to have to do is look at the preamble to the committees of the board and board representation for changes to the process for committee membership. But I don't know if we have come to any decisions on it. That's going to take a little bit of a discussion for us before we can bring it to it. We have to look at policy 8 and review it. There's some policies there. And our next meeting is on January 10th at 1 o'clock. And I will send you.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So.
It isn't 1 week yet, so.
Yeah, so that motion was made by Trustee.
I made the motion, yep.
Yep, so she made the motion to accept the changes. Does anyone have any questions or comments around the changes that have been proposed here today? No? Okay, then all in favor. Okay, and that's passed. Okay, thank you so much, guys. I know it's been a long day and a lot of great conversation here. So I'm going to invite you all to sit back and relax. We've got a wonderful presentation. F3, leave, yeah, that's fine. F3 is Career Practitioner Innovative Program Presentation. So thank you, Mr. Kuzak, for your patience. We are just an hour and 15 minutes behind your presentation time, but we appreciate you being here. Mr. Chad Kuzak, Associate Superintendent, Curriculum and Innovation, will provide an update on the Career Practitioner Program and 2 new innovative alternative programs in the Livingston Range School Division. And we will invite you up to give that presentation now.
Thank you for that. Trustee Poitras, we're going to wait for Nikki to get that presentation up there. And I think I've shared it with most of you. If not, I can. And no, this financial report is not mine.
Oh, let's not do the financial report again.
We might have already done that one before, so.
Chad doesn't want to do that one.
Oh, I can, and I'll put the numbers in it where I see fit. No, I digress. I can start as Nikki's getting that ready, and I can share it with you one more time, just to make sure you have it. Oh, you got it? Okay, there it is. Okay, so this is just a quick presentation on what we're doing now. I can't wait till the practitioners to come and do this in person eventually here. So, but for these purposes, I'll present where we're at and what we're doing right now. So, if you can click on the next slide, if you can see, these are our 2 wonderful practitioners, career practitioners, and these 2 were employed a long time ago to establish transitions. We were looking; it was one of our goals as a board to come up with transitioning from post-secondary. From high school to post-secondary, and then we looked at the transitions between grade 6 and 7, grade 9 and 10, and on and on. And so these 2 have been involved in this for a while. So Letty Croskrey, she takes care of Claresholm, Granham, Staveley, Nanton, and the Crowsnest Pass, and Christy Bazell takes care of Fort Macleod, Pinch Creek, and Lumbrick. Next slide. If we kind of look at our goals, COVID changed the role a bit. And we talked about it where I saw some of the results were a part of the work that these 2 have done, but of all the schools, and I don't want to oversee that and understate the work the schools have done to get these students doing the best they possibly can. But for our high school kids especially, some of these efforts the extra efforts that these 2 make allow us to continue down that progress. So the big part here is the goals for this year. We sat together probably in August and said, let's look at the data. Let's look, what is the data telling us? Where do we see a need for a focus more and beyond what we're already doing? Because you'll see most, like they do career stuff all the time. But we wanted an increased parent engagement. We wanted to provide enhanced service to graduating students. And that's like looking to make sure that they are graduating and looking at almost like counselor's role. So we'll work with every grade 12 student. Offer programming and events to highlight career options for all LRSD learners. So that's still continue to work with some of our elementary. When we can get the time, our focus is on those high schools based on the limited number of individuals we have in that position, but still, I would say they can't help themselves, and they quite often will find them inside those elementary schools. And build this human library now. Basically what this, I want to clarify what this is. This is resources available in our community for us to bring in or for kids to talk to. That may be for accounting or it might be for teacher, who knows. Whatever the resource is that we have, we continue to build that library, that resource in our communities for our students to connect with. So it goes beyond the 2 individuals. And then share initiatives with other professionals at a national CAN Nexus 22 career counseling conference. And you'll see we were asked to present there, which we're very proud of. But we want to create that network of other rural divisions across Canada and urban divisions and see what they're doing and have those conversations. So next slide. So these have been great. I hope that some of you have been able to attend them, and there was a number of them that were presented. So it's called, in this session, it's like last year's was It Doesn't Grow on Trees. This one, It's Possible Career Planning for LSD Families, having a conversation directly with parents after school in the evening virtually. So we had at least 30 families that tuned in at least to one of the possible sessions. We're really promoting this. We hope you get a chance to see it. Lots of valuable information. If you have a child or a young adult that's going to be off into post-secondary or looking for scholarships or on and on and on. The trade schools, employment. There's lots of opportunity to kind of look at what's going on there. You can see that there was the 3 sessions given in November. Next slide. So provide enhanced services to graduating students. Again, we started looking at what we'll call grade 12 orientation. Now, by grade 12, you shouldn't need an orientation of anything, but it was the orientation of basically what to expect for this year and how to be organized. And so it was basically a half-day kind of workshop to work with the kids, the students, the young adults, to be able to make sure they can make their dreams come true and find their career, their choice of careers and their pathways in which they're looking for. So we also try to recognize our grads and those that receive post-secondary offers or admissions or anything that's going on, just to generate a little bit of a buzz in our schools and really, to get everyone excited about their next stage in their academic careers. And then create that concrete action plan. What does it look like after you graduate high school? What can we do to support you down that role? And so if you click on the next slide, you'll see some of the things we would do in those workshops. We would create, make sure that the technical stuff is there, the MyPass that's available. They can see how they're doing. And I encourage all students to access their MyPass to see what they need to graduate. Where are they? And it'll tell you, the parent, the student and the parent, where they're at. So, and then apply AB, which basically works with them applying to post-secondaries in Alberta, and then the digital ID, same thing. It's almost like a digital transcripts. With each child, or each student, these are young adults, I keep saying child, too much time in elementary, never the case. It's always great to be in elementary, but reviewing graduation requirements was key. And that's a carryover from last year to say, okay, you have this many credits to be able to graduate. You need to do this, and this is where you're seeing the summer school and the virtual school and different flexible options for students to access learning inside Livingston Range School Division to make sure they get those graduate requirements and making sure everyone's on the same page. So I think that's a big role what our career practitioners are starting to do in combination of making sure they find those pathways. Develop and then planning with the student, developing those goals, creating timelines, reviewing scholarships, all of those things. And speaking from a parent whose daughter just went through this, it's amazing to have that resource in Livingston Range School Division. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed working with our career practitioners, but also getting my daughter to identify what she wanted to do and that help and the resource that's there with the person. And she had meetings multiple times throughout the year and someone to connect with and someone to connect with now as she's actually in that stage of moving to the next part of her career. So next one. So again, we offer career options for all LRC students, which included, there's our career fairs, and which I thoroughly enjoy. I'll never forget the first one. I went to at AB Daily, and there was cranes, and there was activity, and there's everything going on. This hasn't stopped. So the ones we speak of is Stay the School and West Meadow Elementary School. They're hosting outdoorsy careers, as they called it, on January 27, 2022, COVID permitting, of course, with all the protocols that are in place. But we're planning for that and have Parks Canada, Alberta Parks, Junior Forest Rangers, Work Wild. They'll share some career stories with our K-6 students. So, and we do go virtually. Last year we did virtually this often if we had to. So the connection with these community members is key, and keeping those connections, and it really fits nicely with our place-based values that we have in LRSD. So that's what's going on in January 27th. And then some of this next slide, some of the stuff that has taken place already. So October 28th, CCHS visited the Lethbridge College open house and to be able to look at some of the options that are there. If you click on the next one, we looked at Livingston Range, Matthew Hall, and F.P. Walsh, visited the University of Lethbridge and Lethbridge College on December 10th to just get the feel of what this looks like. And the next one. And then again, they had a career fair in F.P. Walsh November 29th. Was excellent to walk through there and see all the booths that were set up, and that was great. And giving some exposure to all these things. And then WCCHS December 3rd, just recently, they had their education fair as well. Again, big thank you to all the community members and institutions that came to support these events. Again, allow you to talk directly with people regarding potential career choices down the road. So next slide. So what's upcoming, again, it's based on COVID protocol, but Medicine at College we'd like to attend in the spring. It's called EPIC, and Trustee Yegas, I wish I could tell you what those letters mean, but I know it's a career event that takes place with career transitions in Lethbridge, and that'll happen April 13th, 2022. I think it is, I'm pretty sure it's a career fair, and they have people from all over the place, all over, bigger, to be able to do that. Healthcare, career fairs in-house at JT Foster and WCCHS. That's a tentative bookings for that in spring 2022. And the home building career fair in-house at CCHS, spring 2022. So again, following all school divisions and public guidelines for these things to take place. But that's what we have in place and plans for upcoming for our students. Click on the next slide. So super proud of Bloody Croskery. She's been asked to present at this CADEXIS 22 and about rural education and career practitioners. And so to kind of tell our story, represent LRSD, and show and share all the amazing work she's doing, and then hopefully collect some amazing work that others are doing as well. This will be virtual. It's a virtual conference, and I'm happy to say CCHS has stepped up to do all the video recording and make it as professional as you possibly can make it with the stuff that we have, the gear that we have. So super excited about that. I'll keep you posted. There'll be lots of social media posts and stuff on our website to celebrate this happening. So okay, and I think it's the last slide. So more information to come on these, and these are more. These are things that are in pilot mode, if you will. Excuse the pun on the Flight Academy, but we are doing that. We're really excited to announce that we do have 3 students that attend the CFI Flight Academy out of WCCHS. This happens on Fridays. These are grade 10s. They follow Flight 15 program of studies. So this is an actual LDCOM course in which we use, and they follow that program at the facility. They participate in lessons. They do lots of practice, I guess, regarding the questions that are surrounding that. And then they find time on the simulator, which is very interesting, simulator to put theory into practice on those Fridays. And so hopefully these students will continue to flight 25 and 35 and then enroll and then potentially get to, we're not offering the 5 hours of flying, just saying they're not flying under LRC banners when they do this, but get them to 5 hours with potentially CFI to get them really close to their private pilot's license. So we're going to support the students be able to work towards that. And so we started at 15. We have 3 students. We hope we'll have at least that and not more. And by the end, by 3 years, we hope to have at least 15 students working through the Flight Academy out of WCCHS. So very exciting. The firefighter pre-employment, or firefighter academies, that some have called it. This is in Granham right now, and there's 5 students currently enrolled. It's run out of Granham School with occasional trips to the different fire departments in the area, Barons and Granham. This was brought up, though. This once the new training facility is complete in Granham, it'll be there. It'll be stationed in the community of Granham. It's just not complete yet, but we're finding the fire halls. Big thank you to Palliser School Division as well for lending us all the gear. I'll use the word gear again to be able to support the learning for those students. Students will receive 9 high school credits, their CTS credits, as they participate in this, and they will complete certification. Parts of the certification to become a firefighter inside LRST schools. So they'll be well ahead by grade 12 for sure. So those are the 2 that will have more information. We'll both have the principals come up and speak to them, but they're off the ground. Again, I excuse the pun. They're off the ground. So both of them. Nikki, I think that's it. So I open this up for any questions you may have.
Go ahead, Trustee Yagos.
Just on the firefighter one, what grades are those students? Do they go to Granham School, or are they coming out from other schools? And
both. Yeah, they can come from other schools. It's on the Friday afternoon working with the different principals, and it's 10, 11, and 12. Yeah, so this is more pre-certification, pre-employment kind of certifications they can get. So.
Okay, and I noticed Ricky Cutler is still around, eh?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to tell you how wonderful these programs are, as I'm sure you know. But I wanted to share something with you that was posted on Facebook the other day. So obviously Facebook we have to be careful with it. But a parent of one of these students posted a really long post, and I was just going to share with you that she said, she talks a little bit about the program and said, this is the stuff my daughter absolutely loves and has brought joy back to her eyes. When I picked her up after a long day at the Barron's Fire Hall learning skills like busting down doors, I had a very satisfied and tired 16-year-old. This is the kind of program, this is the kind of education that is incredibly valuable and practical. And I want to thank LRSD for thinking outside the box for your students. I am forever grateful. And so I saw this a couple days ago, and I knew that you were having this presentation, and I didn't want to read it all, but these programs, and we have the profound blessing of living in rural communities and being able to do place-based and community-based activities like this. And by thinking outside the box and creating partnerships, we are creating new and innovative spaces for our students to learn and grow and to find their true potential and their passions at a younger age so that they can pursue them. And so I'm grateful for the innovation in our division and for leaders like you who bring it forward. So thank you so much for your work in this area. And I wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you. I do. I mean that. Thank you. That means a lot because we're working very hard to provide these opportunities. And with that, I'd like to say stay tuned. There will be some more to come, I hope, here. So.
Very exciting. Trustee Long?
Mr. Cusack, are you going to send this to us?
Yeah, I can definitely do
Please.
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Any
my
other?
apologies if I didn't.
Nope,
First
that's
time
okay.
every time.
Any other comments from trustees or questions? Perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Cusack, for presenting to us today, and again, for all the work that you do. And we will look forward to having that presentation sent to us. With that, it brings us to G, our key messages from today's meeting. Oh, sorry, I forgot about our extra items. So we're going to talk about key messages. I'll just put a pin in that for a minute. F5, we had PD that was pulled from the consent agenda. So we have professional development. At this time, if there are any trustees who would like to request any professional development to be approved by the board, Trustee Yegas, go ahead.
I'd want to first of all to ask permission, but also perhaps if all the board wanted to join together to do this, I guess can't talk for them, but on, I'll just see what date is that again, on the January 13th from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, the ATA is having a meeting that trustees and the school board working together for public education is the name of it. And I'd like to ask permission, and I don't know if we should ask permission for all the school trustees to come, if they want to come together here, or they could probably do it at home.
Trustee Long?
Trustee Yegas, is this where you're going to make a recommendation that this come out of board PD rather than individual?
Yeah, I guess so.
Would you do that? Make a
Yes,
recommendation
I'll
for
make a
this?
recommendation that
Thank
this
you.
comes under board PD rather than individual PD, so that, and then we could all come here that day. If we, if I won't mandate that. I'll just say we can all, if we want to come here, because it is going to be online, okay? But I also want to add some other things, so I guess we better.
Okay, thank you. So,
vote on that.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and vote on this one first. Yeah, we'll do two separate ones. The recommendation will be that the Board of Trustees approve the January 13th ATA School Board Trustee Summit as
Be under board PD.
As a board trustee
And open to all trustees, yep. It's free.
Okay, let's just have one of us talking at a time. Okay, so we're not confusing Nikki. That the Board of Trustees approved that the January 13th ATA School Board Trustees, or School Board Trustees Summit be approved as a board PD session. Period. Perfect. So is there any conversation that we need to have around that? No? Okay. So that is moved by Trustee Yagos. All in favor? Passed. Thank you. Okay, and then Trustee Yagos.
Yes, I'd like to get permission, and I don't know if other ones we could just add on. The Alberta Health is doing a South Zone engagement, and there's 2 times on Monday, January 17th, and on Tuesday, January 18th. I would like permission to go to the one on the 17th, but I guess you could attend either one. Once again, it's free, but you do have to register.
Okay, so that one was the Alberta Health South Zone engagement. There you go, that's perfect. Okay, are there any other trustees that would like permission to attend that? Trustee Gimber?
Yes, please.
Also myself. And Trustee Sangwitz as well. Okay. Okay, perfect. All those in favor of that PD session being approved for those trustees? Passed? Okay. Thank you, Trustee Yagos. Trustee Gimber?
Hi, I would like to request permission to attend the Rural Caucus of Alberta School Board PD for me on Thursday, December 16th. It would be because this is my first time going to one of those meetings. So I would like approval to attend that, please, as a one-off.
Okay. Just give Nikki a minute. And that's the annual general meeting on the 16th. Perfect. Okay. Any discussion around that one? No? All in favor? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Trustee Yagos.
I'm going to put my name down also to go to it. So I think, anyway, I just like to also add it so that it's just obvious.
Thank you. So we'll have both Trustee Gimber and Trustee Yagos attend the ASBA Rural Caucus on December 16th. We will have our delegate there as well, and Trustee Toon is attending as well, as he's running for a position. Yeah, he has permission already. Perfect. Okay, any other discussion around that? He does. Yep. Yep. All in favor? Thank you. Trustee Gimber, go ahead.
Okay, in addition, I'm seeking permission to attend the Alberta Council for Environmental Education Leaders Virtual Forum on January 13th. It's no cost.
And how long is that one?
I think it's an hour. Sorry, bear with me a moment. Yeah, it's an hour and a half. Virtual.
Okay, and sorry, is there any questions from any other trustees about this one in particular? Go ahead, ask your...
Can you tell us about it?
No, I haven't attended it
About
yet.
the agenda, what's on the agenda, what they'll be discussing.
It's one of the, no, it's an environmental education, so I'm expecting to learn what it's all about, but I wanted to just put it on the approval list because we have other things going on that day, so we may be busy going right up to it, but I didn't want to seek approval in retro. You're the one that sent it to me.
I know I saw this somewhere, but what time is it? Did anybody have the letter that for the time? Because from 9 to 1300 hours is the ATA one?
This one's from 15 to 16:30.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And is it education on environmental things? Like, is the council going to be sharing information, or is it about environmental education in schools?
Okay, it says here it's the Alberta Council for Environmental Education. It's their first virtual forum for 2022. They're launching a crucially important initiative to support school boards in moving forward environmental and sustainability education goals and initiatives.
Okay, thank you. If you are not talking, please make sure you turn off your mic just so we don't get feedback. Does anyone else have any questions about this particular one? Okay, if not, then I'll call the question. All in favor of supporting that? Passed. Perfect. Okay, Trustee Gimber.
This one is on behalf of, I think, a couple of different trustees for Shaping the Future Ever Active Schools, January 27th to 29th. I think Trustee Poitras was also interested in that one.
Thank you. Yeah, I have been to this one before. It's wonderful. I don't think it pertains to me this year. It has a lot to do with outdoor education and helping getting our students moving. It's very beneficial for our coaches to go to. We have in each school, we have teachers and staff that are encouraging movement within the school and healthy lifestyles. For me at this time, it's not the most beneficial one for me to attend. I have a lot of learning and growing to do in other areas, but I have attended it in the past, as well as Trustee Hodges. I know that our Associate Superintendent, Mr. Feller, has been. So I am not seeking approval at this time. Go ahead, Trustee Gimber.
Given that I'm not going to be, after our meeting of the whole today, I won't be sitting on the boards or committees that I thought that I would be, outdoor education-wise, I'm going to rescind that request, please.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Gimber.
One final one is requesting, I guess, funding for 2 books. They are in relation to the Wisdom and Guidance Committee. One is A Knock on the Door, The Essential History of Residential Schools from the Truth and Reconciliation of Canada. And the other is Truth and Reconciliation in Canadian Schools. The cost on them will be $52.94.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that information. Any questions, concerns, or discussion around this? Okay, all in favor? Thank you very much. Trustee Yagos?
Did we already make a motion to go to rural conference? Or did we just discuss it? Did we make a formal motion?
All trustees have been approved.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, any professional development from this side of the table? I just need to stretch my neck this way for a minute. Okay, perfect. So thank you for that. And again, I appreciate everyone looking ahead and making sure that you get your PD taken care of before the events happen, so that other trustees are aware of the opportunities to join you or what you will be attending. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to F6. I believe that this was going to be brought by Trustee Hodges, who had to leave a little bit early, and we excuse her for that. So I will go ahead and read it out, and we will have just a different mover for it. So the recommendation is that the Board of Trustees direct the Advocacy Committee to write and send a letter to our community chambers of commerce within LRSD around having a trustee join the chambers. Would someone else like to make that motion? Thank you, Trustee Stankiewicz. And would you like to speak to it? Okay, not right now. Thank you. Is there any discussion around this? Trustee Yagos.
I think we wanted to add to that community, Chamber of Commerce and other community groups.
So it
Not, no, but it's not other community groups. And other, like, I don't
I
know
would
how to call it.
say, or equivalent community group.
Yeah,
So some of our smaller hamlets do not have a chamber of commerce, but they have a community committee or group.
yeah.
So I would just say
Thank
community
you.
equivalent community group. Thank you very much for that friendly amendment. I will accept that as friendly on behalf of Trustee Hodges. Trustee Long?
Just wondering if we should table this until Trustee Toon and Trustee Hodges are here.
Thank you for that recommendation, as this is not time sensitive. Is everyone comfortable with that? All in favor of tabling this until our January meeting? Yeah, okay. So we'll table this just to make sure that we have all voices at the table and that everyone's comfortable with that. Thank you, Trustee Long. And with that, we'll now move to our 3 key messages. Can I get some recommendations on key messages from trustees? There you go, Trustee Gimber.
Point of order, please. I have a question in regards to professional learning. I did find what Trustee Long sent out, and I don't know if this is a typo on his part, but he said, note the Alberta Council for Environmental Education seminar on January 13th, 2021. Yeah, it's from you. And then you sent that out 8 days ago on December the 6th.
Thank you, Trustee Yagos. Trustee Gimber?
I have the email directly from ACEE, and it is 2022.
It is,
It
okay,
is
thank you.
2022. Thank you very much. Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, and Claire, can you just mute your mic there? Thank you. Sorry, it just gives feedback. Okay, key messages. I would recommend that after all the discussion and public eye that we maybe have one of our key messages be that the Board of Trustees voted against implementing COVID-19 yeah, I would say voted against implementing a COVID-19 proof of vaccination plan or policy. Yeah, it would be plan, right? Voted against implementing the COVID-19 proof of vaccination or
Admin
harm
procedure.
mitigation plan.
We have to add admin procedure in there.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Yep. Yes, that would be great. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Key messages from our meeting today? Things that stood out that we'd like to share? Trustee Long? Oh, Trustee Gimber?
And quarterly financial report that we're on track.
Thank you very much. That's excellent. We can share our quarterly financial report. The summary that was shared with us today has been sent out to everyone or shared with everyone. Trustee Long?
What you want to tell school council parents about now that we have 3 board members on the community as a classroom, schools a base camp. Each ward is represented.
Okay. Trustee Gimber?
Although I think that is fantastic, I would suggest, since we're only supposed to have 3 of them, the career practitioners in innovative program presentation has a lot of really positive keynotes in there.
Yeah, I think it's excellent. Although we don't have to pick because we often have 4. So these are both things that we can share at our upcoming school councils, and I think both are important to share and exciting initiatives that we have coming forward. So, yeah, Trustee Yagos?
That number 3, was this in our board meeting?
No, it was
No,
not.
we have to do things from
Yeah.
our board meeting.
It is exciting. Just
Yes,
mention
it
it
is.
under your breath. Okay, so that leaves us with 3. Does anyone else have anything that they just absolutely want to share that was very impactful and needs to go out to parents, or are we comfortable with those 3? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So we'll go with those 3. And with that, that brings us to H, our in-camera session. At this time, we have no need to go in camera. We have no items to discuss. So I will therefore, look at this, at 4:30 on the dot, I will adjourn the meeting. The recommendation that the Board of Trustees vote in favor of the meeting being adjourned at 4:30 on the dot. If you could write on the dot, that'd be great. Can I get someone to make that motion? Trustee Stankiewicz?
No, I'm against it.
Okay, she wants to stay. Okay, all in favor? Yes. All in favor? Perfect, thank you. I will be